So last week we discussed about wraps, and we basically came out that to be Simcha and Yashiv, like I think I just heard Rav Shlomo saying, it was very, very not posh to say that because of that you should make a mezainis. And we came out that I'll be pashtus on a wrap, you can feel very comfortable making hamaitzi. Actually, yesterday on the hotline, someone called me up and he asked me what bracha I make a wrap, and I was very confident after saying the shir last week, make hamaitzi. Did anyone argue? Did any other shiurim argue on any other magid shiurim? Did anyone else discuss wraps?
There are other psakim that's a suffix, you know.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay, so today we want to discuss pancakes and lasagna and all that. And take what I discussed with Rabelsky about that lasagna. So let's start from the Gemara and we'll try to inch our way up. So the Gemara started again. It's on Lamed Zayin, Lamed Beis. The Gemara says, Truknin is chayiv b'chala. Rav and Amar Yechanan says Truknin pata michala. The Gemara says, my Truknin.
Page 6.
My Truknin Amar Abaya kuva da'ara. Kuva da'ara, we saw in Rashi that there's a hole in the kira and you put mayim and kemach like you do in an ilfis. That was Truknin. V'amar Abaya, the next word was Trisa. Trisa p'tuim menachala. My Trisa, ikad amri gvil marsach. What's that? So Rashi explained, Noisen and kemach umayim bekli. You put water into a kli, ubaychshim bekaf, and you bang it with a spoon. B'shayvchen ala kira shinisakas. You pour it on the kira when it's hot. Fine. That was last week's shmooze, the difference between those two. Now there's another lashon to explain what Teresa is. Nahama dehindika. What's Nahama dehindika? It's a batzek. Rashi says sha'ifim b'shpud u'moishchen oisai tamid b'shemen oibim meibeim b'shemen. It's a dough that you put on a spear in the oven and you keep on smearing it with oil or eggs. Like this, you're making it a wet. It has a lot of wetness to it, so it's not baking. And therefore, the bracha is different. Therefore, there's some that say that it's potter from challah. Now, that the third mandama, the third day is vikadami lechem ha'asir lekutach. What is that? Zakrashi ein oifen oisei betaner ella b'cham. How do you make this lechem? You don't bake it in the sun, in the oven. You bake it in the sun. Now, what's this baking in the sun? What is that nafkamina? Ein oifen oisei betaner ella b'cham. You bake it in the sun. What's this difference where you bake it? Seems like it's a regular dough, but you don't bake it in the oven. You bake it in the sun. Now we know the comparison that we know about bishul b'chama is on Shabbos. Shabbos, we know that bishul b'chama is actually you're not over on bishul on Shabbos if you cook it in the sun. What's the pshat? What's the difference cooking in the sun? So the Iglei Tal explains that bishul in the sun tastes different than bishul b'tana. When you're cooking something in the sun, it's not just a shinui in the maisa, which means normally the maisa of cooking, baking, is in an oven, and now you baked it in the sun. The Iglei Tal says that can't be because that won't be pata on Shabbos. There's a shinui in the maisa, so it's asam d'Rabbanan. How could it be bishul b'chama's mutter completely? So the Iglei Tal explains because there must be a shinui in the outcome. It means that the outcome of cooking, of baking in the sun is not this. It won't taste the same. I haven't ever tried it. Maybe out here in Florida, there's such a musik that you could bake something in the sun. But by us, we never tried such a musik of baking something in the sun. So the Tal says that it tastes completely different. So now let's try to have an understanding why lechem asa b'kutach, also the kutach should be a different, not chayav and challah, because the outcome of the baking is different. Now, it's a big yisod in the Shabbos that it's not just enough. The Tal's mechadash and it goes through all the malachas. We're not going into that now, but in order to be potter from Shabbos, it's not just enough a shini ma'isa. It has to be that there's a shini in the outcome. And Moshe has a whole tshuva on this regarding microwaves. If you cook in a microwave on Shabbos, you bake in a microwave on Shabbos, and Moshe wants to know if the outcome is different. So you're going to be potter. So Moshe says that eventually everyone is going to. The famous tshuva in Moshe says eventually everyone is going to bake and cook in a microwave. So we see that Chach is not like that. Even 30, 40 years after the microwave came out, after Moshe wrote the tshuva, it's still not the norm to cook in a microwave. We reheat in the microwave, but we don't cook. Okay, but upon him, getting back to our sugya, so it says over here that since you bake it in the sun, Therefore, you're potter from challah. And let's go a little bit right in the Gemara. We'll see Taisus' kasha on Rashi. In fact, the Gemara about Tanya Chayav b'challah. How could Abaye say you're potter from challah? He's going connected a brisa. Abaye can't argue on a brisa. The brisa says you're chayav b'challah. Keduktani timer. Have you the aimer? My answer is Hasam keduktani timer. Have you the aimer? Myself, my chichin Allah. Over there, the maisa is mechiach on it, which means, the Gemara explains, asan ka'avin. If you made it ka'avin, chayavin. But then you'll be chayav and challah. Kalmudin, if you made it kalmudin, then you'll be potter. Now what's the difference? What does this mean? Rashi explains, ka'avin arucha umekutefes kugluskayas. Noise. You make it a nice dough, it looks nice. You braid it nicely. Then you challah. Why? Because you're showing that your das is daite lelechamasa. Challah is made pretty, made nice. But if you made it kilamudin, Rashi can asarm like a stick. You weren't makbid on the way it looks. You weren't makbid on the tzura of it. And then you potter from challah. Why? Because it's muchach that mitchila that you mechaven to make it lekutach. So which means that the difference is the way you make it, the way you braid it. If you braid it nicely, so then it's challah. If you don't braid it nicely, then we know your intentions were not for challah. Your intentions were lekutach, and therefore it would be mutter. Okay, so that is the sugya that we have to see today. We're going to be discussing lechem ha'atzil lekutach. So Taisus on Divra Maschel Lechem Ha'atzil Lekutach on Zayin Amud Beis is bothered that Rashi says Isa shemiyavshem b'chama, Isa which you dry out in the chama, which means you're baking it in the sun. Like Taisus, what's going on here? There's a Mishnah in Challah that says Lahed Yifakat. The Mishnah in Challah discusses when are you chayav in Challah. The Mishnah says Kol shetchilasa Isa v'soifei sufkinin hayavim b'Challah. If it's tchilasa Isa v'soifei sufkinin, then you're chayav in Challah. Which means if the beginning wasn't a batter, it was dough, and even though at the end you ended up cooking it, sufkanen, you didn't bake it, you chayav and challah. So too, the Mishnah says, if you started the ketchila with sufkanen, which means it was a batter, a cake, and then you ended up baking it, you also chayav and challah. If say in the beginning, which means it wasn't a dough, it was a batter, it was a runny batter, and say at the end you cooked it, then you pot from challah. But any other case, if tchilasa sufkanen, if any other time it was an Easter process, which means either it was baked or in the beginning it was a dough and you cooked it, you chayav and challah. So how could Rashi tell us that such a case is pot from challah? This should be chayav and challah because by us, we were discussing a regular bread, a regular thick dough that you're just baking it in the sun. So why does that pater you from challah? That is Taisus kasha. And therefore, Taisus brings the benetam in Cain, in Nevailish, Shailish, Tchilasam Isa, Mevarchen ala Amaitzi v'chayavin v'challah afal pi the Seifei Sufkanen. Even though it's Seifei Sufkanen, Yechayev and challah. Now let's just make Akdami. Where did Taisus see in Rashi that we're talking about a regular dough? Maybe Rashi is also discussing a runny batter that you're putting in the sun, you're baking in the sun. That's the case in Rashi. Where did Taisus see that it has to be that we're discussing the beginning was a Isa? And the answer is because Rashi doesn't make enough communion. The Rashi says it's regular lechem, which is asil lekutach, and what's the intentions? Rashi says very clear that what you're doing is the difference is only that it's made b'chama. If it'll be like if Rashi would be discussing a runny batter, so Rashi should say two things. Rashi should say, the batter is runny, and also say where you baked it, you baked the b'chama. The fact that Rashi doesn't make a mention, so therefore it's muchach that Rashi holds that we're discussing over here a regular batter, and therefore Taisus is bothered with his kasha that l'chayra, the Mishnah says lahedya fakad, the Mishnah in Pei says that if a person goes ahead and bakes or has a doughy batter and cooked it, even challah with our sugi. That is Taisus Kash. Now, there are many terutzim in the Rishonim to answer Rashi. And there's a lot of Rishonim that learn up the Mishnah and Chala different. That's going to be very relevant to us in Halacha, which we'll see in Kuf Samaches. Taisus is bringing from the Ben Tam that the Pshat in the Mishnah and Chala is like we just discussed. That means that the beginning of the Maisa was Belila Raka, was a soft batter, and the Saif was, let's say, Afa Bechama, or wasn't Betana, or it was let's say cooked. It's hard to have a runny batter cooked, but if you have such a musig, therefore that would be potter. But anything else, if it was again, like we said, if it was a dough or it was baked, even though it was a runny batter, then you'll be chayav and challah. That's how the Ben Tam learns the Mishnah. That's the difference between chalas sufkin and seifa sufkin and chalas sufkin and seifa isa and all that. Rav Rishonim in the Mishnah and Chala, which is the Rash on the side of the Mishnayos, the Ramban in the Chala, the Rashba in the Chala, the Rosh in the Chala, the Rambam in the Bikurim, and other Rishonim. They explain the Mishnah different. They explain the Mishnah. Sufkinen is talking about bilas oven. Not like we just said, chilas sufkinen means bilas raka. It means there's a dough batter to it, but it's baked in a way that you would not consider it lechem. The mashal, it came, ayidei chayma shemesh, like we're saying over here that you're baking a bechama, or you're cooking it. So the Mishnah is teaching us that a dough that you make sufkinen, you put from challah, if b'shas da'asiyah se'isa, while I'm rolling the dough, I'm making the batter. I thought to have it, and my intentions were that I'm going to end up doing sufkinen. That's called chilasei sufkinen v'soifei sufkinen, which I'm part. Again, the Rash says everything's dependent on my machshava. If my machshava lekatchila, even though it was a dough, it was a hard batter, it wasn't a runny batter. Still, if my intentions were b'shas metchilas asiyasa, while I'm making it, my intentions were in order for me to make donuts out of it, in order for me to not to have a challah, I'm looking to make something which should be a mezainis, not something that I'll be kaveh on it, or I'm looking to make a cake. Even though likatchila I had in mind likatchila it was a dough, it wasn't a batter. That's called chilas sufkinen v'soifei sufkinen, and I'll be potter from challah and I'll make a mezainis. If my intentions first were to go ahead and have a dough for challah, and then that's how I made the dough. And then I switch my mind while I'm baking it. I switch my mind and decided, you know what? I'm going to go ahead now. And even though I'm cooking, whatever I'm doing, I switch my mind that b'shas tasiyah was meant for challah. And then I switch my mind. That would be called chilasai isa v'soifei sufkinen, and I'll be chayim challah. So again, let's just say this machlok is very clear. There's a machlokes Ben Tam and most of the other Rishonim. The Ben Tam shita is that chilasei sufkinen v'soifei sufkinen means that originally while I'm making it a sufkinen, which means a runny batter. The soifei sufkinen means I also ended with that, which means I ended with not a challah intentions. I ended with baking it in the oven. That would be chilasei isa v'soifei isa. Chilasei sufkinen v'soifei isa means the katchila I had a runny batter and then I baked it in the oven. That's also chayav challah. Only time I put it in the time is if I had a runny batter in originally and I cooked it. That's going to be part of, because that's called chilasei sufkinen v'soifei sufkinen. Masha enkein the Rash and the other achronim that we mentioned before, they hold that the difference is totally in your machshava. If my machshava lekatchila was that I'm going to end up with a sufkinen, even though I had a doughy batter, I had a dough, not a runny batter, that would be considered chilasei sufkinen v'soifei sufkinen, which is pata. So therefore, out Rashi, Pashtus, the way the achronim learn pshat in Rashi. Rashi is going like the shittas Rash, not like the shittas of Ben Tam that Taisus is quoting, and therefore it's very pasha to answer Rashi, because once I baked it and I tended in the beginning while I was making the dough, even though I was making a hard dough, it wasn't a soft batter, it wasn't a runny batter. I intended to have it as a sufkinen, to end up like a sufkinen, which means not to bake it in the oven, either to do it b'chama or to cook it, then how Rashi and the Rash that would be considered Chilasa Sufkanim v'Seifa Sufkanim, and I would be potter from Chala, and I would make him a Zainis. So it comes out of very Yisayis big machlokes between Rashi, let's call it Rash, and the Benatam, because Rashi, not everyone learns like that in Rashi. We'll learn it like that in Rashi to answer Taisus Kasha. Between the Rash and the Benatam, and then we'll move on to the Shulchan Aruch. So again, the machlokes is, the Mishnah in Chala does say that Chilasa Isa v'Seif Sufkin and Yechayev, and also Chilasa Sufkin and V'Seif Isa Yechayev. So the Benatam learns the way we would learn Pashut, which means Chilasa Isa means a hard dough, and Seifei Sufkin means you're not cooking it, you're not baking it in the regular way of baking, which means not in the tanner. Then halter Benatam that Yechayev and Chala. Therefore, he has his kasha on Rashi. Who cares that you ended up baking a bechama, but it was a hard dough? So therefore, you should be chayev and chal, and you should be making a maitzi. Rashi is going to answer us that he holds like the Rash, that the Rash feels that the difference, the pshat in the Mishnah is what my intentions were, not what the batter looks like. If my intentions in the beginning was to end up with a sufkanin, then if it was b'shas da'asiyah, then the bracha is mezainis, and you're not chayav and chala. If my intentions, the katchila was, I did the same exact thing. I had that chilasa isa, but I ended up cooking it. I ended up putting it b'chama. How the rash that then you'll be chayav and chala. So now, let's see the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch and Siman Kuf Sam Maches Sif Yud Gimel.
Go to the Shulchan Aruch, please, on page 186.
Are they putting it on?
Yeah. In the rough here?
Yes. A little higher. I don't have a Shulchan Aruch with me. Okay, Sif Yud Gimel. Yeah. So Shulchan Aruch says as follows: Afilu dava shebli lasai ava, which means they put in peish lisha sakemach b'mayim. You have regular lisha, your regular kneading dough, water and flour, ava, and it's thick. In bishlu oitignui, if you cooked it or you metagen it in oil, ein mevorach aleh amaitzi. You do not make a bracha amaitzi, which means this is tchilasai, as much as far as we understand the Pashup Shat. This is tchilasai isa, was a regular dough, not a batter, not a runny batter, and it ended up being, you ended up cooking it, then you would make hamaitzi. Afilu sheyesh aleh terisa dinaham, va'afilin is chayva b'chala. Even if you are chayva b'chala. The bichas hamaitzi eina yeilech ela achashas afiyah. Hamaitzi, you go with the zman of afiyah, and since the afiyah was a bishul, therefore you'll be potter. That is the first day in the Shulchan Aruch. So where do we have such a case? I'll give you a little bit of a mashal, which is not the best mashal, but our bagels are originally the doughy batter, and then if you don't know the mitzvah, they cook it. So the chayah light this first day, since they cook it, you would not make hamaitzi. So regular bagels, you should make them as zainis. Is that true? No one ever said that. Why? Shammai says a tshuva on this, and the Moshe explains to us. Because since that, I don't know if you're having a bagel store, but if you watch the bagel, they just put it in that big pot of water for literally a few seconds that it should get a hard shell to it. Why is a bagel harder than bread? Because they cook it. That cooking is not really making it that it should be roy la'achila. So Moshe says there's no tzad to make him a zainis, even though we have this first day in the Shulchan Aruch that says that anything that's cooked, you make him a zainis. Even though it's belilasa ava, that's our bagel dough, Dr. Moshe, but since the bagel dough, the time that it got cooked is not yet roy la'achila, it's just in there for a few moments. So therefore, Dr. Moshe, that won't be considered enough of a svara to say that that's soifei bishul, because you have to bake it afterwards in order to make it roy la'achila. It's a very wichtige Moshe, because there's some that want to argue, and we, as the Minig Ha'olam, hold very strongly not like that, and the reason is because, like Moshe is telling us, because when it's getting cooked, that wasn't roy la'achila yet. It's a cooking that just makes it the outside hard, but you can eat it. The inside is still completely raw, and therefore you would make a hamaitzi. Okay, so akapanim, Shechanah is telling us, but if I take a dough and I cook it, that would be a mezainis. Let's give another comparison. Let's say I have donuts that you fry donuts. So over there, the donuts is a thick batter, and you go ahead and you fry it, which is like cooking. You put it in a deep fryer. You have many donuts made like that. If so, like the first day in the Shechanah, the reason why you make a mezainis is very pashut, because you ended up cooking it. So Mela, no problem, make a mezainis. That is the Shechanah, first day. So that's very negeya. Like I'm saying, to many donuts that they're frying the donuts, and many of them, even if it's not so sweet, which you have the custard donuts, are not so sweet. The dough itself there is, you have to know Rav may pay us or not. That's going to be a different discussion. That's going to be a much more passive of a kissing discussion. That'll be maybe next week. But akapanim, so therefore that would be a big shaila about, Pashtus, this first day in Shechanah tells you very clear that since it's cooked, that's frying. He says, Kla, bishloi, tigna. Tigna is frying. And since it's deep fried, it's completely oiled. The shaila is when something's not deep fried, which we'll discuss about pancakes. But something which is deep fried, that's completely dipped in the oil, surrounded with oil, that has all the milas of tigun, and therefore you would make. You're told by Minig Yushalayim that you make a mezainis on bagels. I don't know. Listen, there's going to be a Yachekala soon. I guess we'll have to see what that is. I don't know. I never heard of that. I never heard that they make. There is maybe a mezainis bagel that someone would, maybe they would put Rav May Paris. I never saw that. I never saw that someone should be making mezainis on a bagel. Maybe like mezainis, but I didn't see that. Akapanim was saying what?
Does the May Paris turn it into a mezainis automatically? Why are they selling?
We're saying that's because the dough itself. That's impossible. Kissin. Rabbi Lezer Parker is a Mishnah. Is in a. There's someone else over here that has a Kaisel background. I wonder if he's also in Eretz Yisrael. But Akapanim, I never saw this either. Akapanim, there's May Paris, Rav May Paris. That's going to be the shmooze about mezainis bread. That's which we'll discuss Passover Bava Kistin. That is going to be the big machlekes going on, which we'll discuss the masham and all that. About if that should go ahead and make him this because Rav May Paris. Yes, Rav May Paris is a reason, definitely so. Shaila is how much May Paris and if it tastes like it and all that. But akapanim, so let's get back to our sugi. Our sugi we're discussing first, the first day in Shechanah is that you're right. You are chayiv and challah because this is called chilasa yisa. But still, like hamaitzi is not dependent on challah, and hamaitzi is tali all b'shas afir. Let's move on. The yesh chelkim v'ayim. Mechaber brings the second day. The yesh chelkim v'ayim the chol shetchilas. Yeah, turn the page. Go further. Shetchilas the isa ava. If the beginning of the isa was ava, va'afilo yichika acha kach b'mayim, va'asa sufkanin. You made it then sufkanin. Bishla b'mayim tigna b'shemen. Mevarach aleh ha'maitzi, you make a ha'maitzi. V'nogu lahakal. And the minig is, what's that? So the Mechaber brings 2 days. The Mechaber says that the first day was, like we're saying, you make a mezainis. The second day is the Shittas Benetam. Shittas Benetam that we said in Taisvis was that calls man. The Tchilasa is Isa. Doesn't make a difference what you do afterwards. You cook it, you metagan it b'shemen, you make a hamaitzi. Zak, the Mishabur of an Ahagu lahaka. The minig is to be makel. Okay? The Mishabur is telling us, I'm sorry, the Ramah is telling us that Bnei Ashkenaz are makel and they would make a mezainis. But the Mechaber continues on and says, V'yeshamayim yotzi de'eshneim. The Yeshamayim is yotzi v'la yochel ela yedei she'yivarech alechem achat chila. So Yeshamayim should go ahead and make a bracha on lechem first. In order for you to go ahead and make to eat this chilasa isa, the seifei sufkanin, the Mechaber is stuck. He has a machlokes, And normally stam v'achach yesh in the mechaber we pass like stam, but over here he's telling you that but Yirei Shemayim should be Yotze Shneim. He tells you try to be makpid on the second day also. What's called the Yirei Shemayim? Who's called the Yirei Shemayim? This is from the HaRav Shilas. Should you put yourself in a category of Yirei Shemayim? Or I say no, I'm just not a Yirei Shemayim and I'll do what I want. So I don't want to go into this, but I think everyone online over here is Yirei Shemayim. Yirei Shemayim means that someone who takes life serious and he wants to become a better Jew. He's a Ben Aliyah. So that's Yirei Shemayim. So Yirei Shemayim Yotzi de Shneim and V'lo Yeichel Eli de Shevarach Alechem Achatchila. But we have the Ramah, and the Ramah says V'nagu lahakir. So now I have an interesting deal. Normally, if the Ramah would be arguing on the Mechaber completely, he would write it after the Mechaber wrote V'yirei Shemayim Yotzi de Shneim. He wouldn't write it in between. He writes V'nagu lahakir after he says the two opinions. Now let me tell you something. When you have two opinions in the Mechaber anyways, Stam v'achakach yesh, we go with Stam. So the Mechaber himself, B'nai Svart, also do like the minig could be lahakir. But after that, when the Mechaber is going to write V'yirei Shemayim Yotze de Shneim, the Ramah, since he wasn't Magia after that, the Ramah agrees that's what Yirei Shemayim should do. The Ramah is not telling V'nagu lahakir Yirei Shemayim should argue on the Mechaber. If the Ramah would have written it after Yirei Shemayim, then the Ramah then you could have said, oh, very good. This is a diak that I spoke about a few times. I spoke about more than once. I quoted a Pri Megadim, not over here, but there's a big nafkamina if there are more writes menagu or noyagim, and there's different lashinis in that. But we're not going to go into it now. But now I'm just trying to make a different diak. I'm telling you that if the Ramah wrote it before he wrote the Yirei Shemayim, it means that Ramah's not telling you the Yirei Shemayim. He agrees with the Mechaber that he should be makbid and not eating a teichasuda. Now, we don't know yet a case, so okay, big deal. It's going to make a big nafkamina if you want to become part of this Yirei Shemayim. So again, I'm just being medayik that the Ramah agrees to this Yirei Shemayim, and it answers a steer to later on, which I'm not going to get into now. There's a steer that the Welt asks from a different Ramah that's mashma, that the Ramah says you should make a mitzi. So I'm telling you because his v'nagu lahakil is going on the ikkedin that the minig was to be makel. But definitely he agrees to the Mechaber that Yirei Shemayim should be machmir. Okay, now let's move on. So then the Ramah continues and says, "V'chol ze leimayri ela b'izbe la'acha afiyah toyalechem." Has to have a toyalechem after the afiyah. Avol yilesbe toyalechem kigon lakshin. And then the ein la'achlam elam came birch al shah bas tchila. Fine, that we know that we'll discuss later on, like we just said before, but the gabe the din of pasta baba kisnin, that would still make it a pasta baba kisnin. Okay, so now let's get into pancakes. What bracha do you make on pancakes? Pancakes has the toyalechem. We still don't know exactly what toyalechem is, but that's clear that pancakes has a toyalechem. Pancakes has, let's say that, toyalechem means that it has some bubbles, and that's what maybe Cheerios could be toyalechem. Like upon them, it has some, like we see in sourdough, that even though there's no yeast to it, there are bubbles to it. So that's why it has a shem lechem to it. So the pancakes have that. Now, it's not mevushal in a lot of shemen. You don't deep fry pancakes. You won't be bad to it. There's a little bit of shemen. Why do you have the shemen? In order not to connect to the pat. That your matar is not really right. It's more the fact that it shouldn't connect it. It shouldn't get stick to the pot. So now, what bracha do you make on that? Pashtus. It's not lilase ava, not pashtus. It isn't. It's a runny batter. But the Ramah says, let's go back to the Ramah and Simukuf Samaches Sif Yudalid. Yeah, okay, we'll get to the passable because he's asking a very good shaila. Let's go to the Ramah and Sif Yudalid. V'chein Dava. Okay, we can start from the Mechaber. Chalut Pirish Kimin Pas Chelt and Oisei B'Reischen. Okay, it's like a bread. that you put into hot water. This is a little bit like our bagels, like we discussed before. You bake in a tanner without any mashka. Dinoi kepas. Umevarech olav hamaitzi v'shalosh brachos. That has regular din like pas. V'cheinim afay be'ilfis b'loy mashka. You did it without any mashka. U'ma'at mashka shemayishchem by ilfis. Shelo yitzay fe'isa. You put in a little bit of juice that on this pot that the isa should not burn. Loy mikri mashka. That's not considered mashka. This is basically talking loud and clear to our pancakes. Aval dava shabli lasai raka, something which is bilasai raka v'tagnai b'mashka, and you were metagging it in mashka lekula alma lav lechem. That's definitely not lechem, lav lechem. Okay, so again, there are more coming off of what we discussed. The Rama is telling us that something which is bilasai raka, but you're baking in a tanner. Now, a tanner doesn't have to mean dafka a tanner. A tanner means that there's nothing else besides the fire. It means there's no water. There's no bishul. Bishul normally means water. Tanner means without water. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that you're opening up the oven door and putting it in the oven. You could bake on top of the oven also. You bake a kugel in a pot. They're baking the potato. It's not called cooking the potato kugel. They're baking the potato kugel because this is a misconception. On top does not mean in a pot doesn't make something cook. The water, therefore, if you're baking, you have bilasai raka. Rama's telling you clear, it's bilasai raka. It's a batter. It's not a dough. Still, if you off it without any mashka, that is a dinei kapas. Umavarich alav hamaitzi v'shalosh brachos. So you have a maitzi and shalosh brachos. So what are we going to do with this? Isn't that a pancake? A pancake is something which is bilasai raka, and something which is bilasai raka, and there's no water to it, there's no mashka to it, it's not metugim b'shemen, it's not deep fried. The halacha is that you should go ahead and make hamaitzi. Now let me just remind you a little bit to last week's shmuz, which comes in over here. We had a difference between truknin and trisa. We discussed last week, there's truknin and trisa. What was the difference? I'll read it outside, but it's really the Shulchan Aruch and Siftaz. Oh, you have it. Shulchan Aruch and Siftaz Vav, which is a very important nekuda for this week also. That how we discussed wraps was that by wraps, what you have is you have a thick batter. That's why we said l'chayretz hamaitzi. You have a thick batter that should be, which is a thick dough. Just it was thin. That was wraps. But akaponim, we had this and Shiloh was a thin batter. So let's see the mechaber truknim. Hainu she'oisin guma bekira. You make a hole in the kira. V'noisim ba kamach umayim u'ravim ba. You make kamach u'mayim that are mixed in it. V'nefesh sham, and it's baked over there. Mevarech olav bayim in mezainis. You make a bayim in mezainis. The bracha achas man shalish. V'im kava sudase olav mevarech hamaitzi b'chs hamazon. Aval teresa. The hainu shaloichin kamach u'mayim u'ma'avin oysa. So this is a soft batter. V'shoivchen ala kira. You pour on the kira. V'u'mispashet v'nefe. It's mispashet and it's nefer ein olav teres lechem klal ve'ein mevarchen olav ela bayim min mezainis v'afilu kavos sudase olav. So this is what's very negatas. This Teresa is very negatas because this Teresa is something which is sorry, there's just an animal right next to me over here. Okay, yeah, this Teresa is a runny batter. This Teresa is something which is, that's exactly what the Mechaber says. Teresa is something which is a runny batter, and therefore, Zok the Mechaber ein olav teres lechem. So now, is a pancake a runny batter that ein olav teres lechem? That is the shayla. If not only that, the Mechaber writes, afilu kaveh sudase olav, on a runny batter that you kaveh suda, you don't make a hamaitz. So is we have to know what a pancake is. If a pancake is a runny batter, that's the shaykhana bu mispashet v'nefa ain't all of toyas lech. Now I don't know which pancakes you have seen. The pancakes that I have seen, it is mispashet, but it's thick enough that it's not. It doesn't come to thin like blinza, like the blinza batter. A pancake has a thickness to it. If you go in Lakewood, you go into Four Corners and you order 3 pancakes for breakfast. They're thick pancakes. That's not just mispashet v'nefa. It is mispashet somewhat, but it definitely has a thickness to it. By a blinza batter, that taka loses its hold to its alechem. There is no thickness at all. But this batter has a thickness to it. So if this batter has a thickness to it, then l'chayra, that does not go into Teresa. So this is where you could mistake and say that pancakes, there's no, why people would make a mezainis without any hamaitzi, even if they ate 3 of them, and that's their lunch, that's their breakfast, because they'll be saimich that that's a Teresa. But we disagree with that, and we feel very strongly that that's not the mechaber's case. The mechaber's case is mispashet, the nefer ain olav teres lechem. Who's going to make a difference between a pancake, the way a pancake looks, and the way a piece of bread looks? The only difference is that it's more yellow and it's sweeter. Okay, that might be a possible kiss and shmooze, but something which is to say that it lost its tayar lechem, that and therefore, I don't think that goes into Teresa.
So
that's
isn't a pancake mispashet l'maisa?
It is mispashet, but how much? I'm showing you that there's a type
It goes
of
that flat on a
mispashet
griddle.
like
You
a
can't
blintz and
stop it.
mispashet.
Once it starts,
Yes, again, so when you put it on a griddle, that's the gesturaya. Why doesn't it come thin like the blintz batter? You have to be able to explain that, which means that the batter of the pancake has a thickness to it that doesn't let it. You're talking about a griddle that's not so hot. I'm not talking about you put it in a form. That's a waffle. That's even worse. But I'm saying that you're not putting it in a form. Why is it stopping? And why doesn't it just roll like water? Right? Or like you when your wife makes a blinta. I don't know what that's called again. That something a blinta batter, right? So over there that's very thin. Why isn't your pancake looking like that? Because there's a lot more flour to it, and it's much doughier. It's not as runny as everything else. So therefore, a pancake batter is not Teresa. So let's go back to what the put it into. It's back into that Ramah that we just discussed. The Ramah says in Sif Yudalit, the Ramah feels that chilasai sufkinen, which is a batter, which is a pancake. Sorry, yeah, it is sufkinen, but soifai isa, like we saw, which means that you didn't deep fry it, you put in a little bit oil that it shouldn't burn. So what's the halacha? Zakter ma, you make hamaitzi. It's a regular lechem. Dinoi kapas umavarach alav hamaitzi shalish brachos. So if so, what's the tzad not to make a hamaitzi? So again, the tzad to make a mezainis we thought maybe would be Teresa, and that's why as many pancakes as you eat, it doesn't make a difference. But we're telling you it's not Teresa. It can't be it's Teresa. Teresa lost the tayas lechem. It's not Teresa. So let's put it into the gather of the Ramah, which is regular tchilasei sufkinen v'seifa isa. The Ramah tells us tchilasei sufkinen v'seifa isa is hamaitzi, and yichai v'chal and all that. So therefore, we're back to a hamaitzi on pancakes. So what's there to argue? The argument is, which is a very valid argument, that it's Rav made Paris. Yes, a pancake is very sweet, and therefore you should make a mezainis just like cake. Not any different than cake. Cake is a batter, a runny batter, that you go ahead and you bake it. So it's chilasei sufkin v'seifa isa. Why am I not making hamaitzi? Because you have to know, because since it's Rav made Paris, it tastes like cake, has a sweetness to it. You can't eat that much of it, whatever we'll discuss, and therefore that is klar a mezainis. Okay, so let's put it into the cake. But there's one big problem. By cake, we know that if you're going to eat, it's klar, any pasta babakissin that you're being kaveya Sudan, you're going to make hamaitzi, and you're going to watch, you're going to bench. So normally a cake is not the norm. You don't eat cake for breakfast, which means cake is not something that you can eat that much of. How many pieces of marble cake can one person eat? But when it comes to pancakes, it's a very normal thing that pancakes should be for lunch. Okay, it's kedai if they technically find the pancake batter and it's not going to be so simple because you have to see the way it runs. Not just enough having the batter, you would see the way it runs also. But al kapanim, there's cake is the reason why we don't make hamaitzi on cake is something which is not a Danish. A Danish is a snack. There's a limit how many Danishes you could eat. You don't eat more than one Danish. Most people don't eat more than one Danish. Pancakes, you go to the store, I want pancakes for lunch. Not only that, there are many women that make pancakes for supper for their children. I don't know if it's going to fly for the husbands, but for the children, it's a regular supper. You have a griddle and you make pancakes for supper. The kids come home, what's for supper Thursday night? Pancakes. So now that means it's a regular supper. The halach is klar. Pass above a kiss and you're being kaveh suda. It's not shchiach for us because we know cake and we're not being kaveh on cake. But someone that's being kaveh on pancakes, he should wash and make hamaitzi and bench. So I understand that it's Rav Paris. Again, we're not arguing that in Nakuda. So it really doesn't come into Trukton and Trisa and all this Ramah that we discussed in Sif Yudalid. But it does come in because the Ramah tells us that this has a din lechem. The only reason why it's not going to have a din lechem is only because you're putting in Rav Paris. Rav Paris makes a pass above a kisnin. Pass above a kisnin, they be kaveh suda. You have to wash and make a hamaitzi and bench. Midayraisa. That's halacha l'maisa. I'm not changing from that. The halacha l'maisa is, and I spoke to Belsky and he agreed with me, that pancakes that someone is eating for lunch, he's eating it for a suda. If he has one of them, okay. So that's a snack. But if he's eating 3 pancakes and that's a regular suda, you come full afterwards, you should go ahead and make a hamaitzi and bench. I'm not telling you if you want to be more makbid, maybe take a piece of bread. But stam not to be gairis, this nakuda is mamish going connected everyone. It's going connected this Ramah, that the Ramah says kla, and the only reason why the kula is not a kula, the reason why you make a mezainis on one pancake is because that's not a mitzvah. If you go to a bris and you decide, you know what, you're not interested in washing, and you'll have pancakes instead, some bris have pancakes, it does not help you because you're being kaveh sud on it. And not only that, even if you can eat one pancake and inside you'll have some tuna fish. Oh, here it comes. Look at these pancakes. This is a regular pancake that they're selling. This pancake is a regular thickness to it, and it wasn't made in a molding. That's how the pancake can hold. Yeah, look at that batter. That's a thick batter. Look at that. Mamish, beautiful picture. That's very thick. And that's why it's not just falling apart like a blinzer batter. I can't get better than this. It's claw. It's not thick like a dough, like bread, like challah. But look here, you can pick it up like that. This is after a few seconds, a person's already picking it up and turning it over. That means it didn't just fall over the pot. A blinzer batter would just go ahead and fall over a pot. This has a fluffiness to it.
It looks like French toast, except it wasn't nefa yet. That's all.
Exactly. Mamish.
It has a ter lechem.
Mamish a ter lechem. And therefore, again, I'm not telling you if you eat one pancake, you make hamaitzi. No, I did not say that. But we're telling you that if you're being kaveh suda, which is very shchiach, then you should go ahead and make a hamaitzi. Now, how does a blinzer batter look? As far as I remember, blinzer batter just pours. You don't need a spoon for a blinzer batter. Blinzer batter just pours right out. Okay, so akapanim, that's why a pancake, and so too a waffle. A waffle has even more to it. A waffle sometimes is not as sweet. So that might be a real hamaitzi, which means a waffle is put in a form and it's not as sweet. I don't know. I'm not so lucky on how waffle tastes. But unless it's the same as a pancake, it just looks different. It just has those squares, made out of squares. But I don't know. But if it's a different batter and it's not Rav Peiros, then you'll get stuck with a real hamaitzi, even if you're taking one bite out of it. Because that is a Ramah that says clearly that you should make hamaitzi. Now, the Ramah tells us, okay, is that clear?
So the Ramah say if you go to eat lunch and you eat more than 2 pancakes, it's zichar hamaitzi, or you should order a piece of bread.
Order a piece of bread. That will get into passive kissin. That if you have a real passive kissin, the shaila should you order bread or not? The ma'aser should you make? There's a taz. Okay, Shemaim could do that, but no, I wouldn't. If you don't have bread, it's a ketchila to make amaitzi on the pancake itself. So if you're away and you're not home and you're going to out to eat, and for lunch you're eating 3 pancakes, it's clear by me that you make let's see cheese buns. Yeah.
Let's say you're at a bris and they're offering a bagel.
Oh, look at this! Look at this! Here, look at this! This is just going on by itself. You're pouring it out of a. He had a. Look, it's just rolling along. You cannot do this with any other. No, nothing. Okay, so this is the kla nafkamina, and this is what the Rama was talking about. So if someone says that the pancake is blilas raka, yes, it is, but it's not blilas raka that it lost its taya lechem that the Rama said that over there the Mechaber said by Teresa, and even that Mechaber we spoke about last week. Mishabur quotes from the Magen Avraham and others. And you could that if you kaveh a sudi, you do make a mitzvah. I'm not so. I didn't want to mention that because you don't need to come on to that. This is a cheese. This is very thin. If you pick it up, you can't pick it up. This taka falls. This is probably what they showed Rabbi Yashiv, and they blamed that also for a wrap. This is probably a cheese blintz that they showed Rabbi Yashiv. But anyways, akapanim, that's what Rabbi Yashiv would say mezainis. But getting back to us, we spoke about the wraps last week already. But I'm very, very confident to say that if you eat 3 pancakes, and you're not going to be too much more. You don't make believe like you're eating it for not for kva. Three of those pancakes make a normal person full. It's sayed, and that's Yisuda. You might eat other things also, but that is the Ikasuda, and you should be making a Hamaitzi and a Bechsa Mazin. Now, let's just skip the Cheerios for a moment, because Cheerios, there's a machlokes if it has a Taya Lechem or not. And it makes a big difference. Because if you hold it as a Taya Lechem, first of all, the Gabe is a Pas Akum, and that gets a little complicated because OU is not machmer on that a Yid should be turning on the oven. So if it's Pas Akum, you have to know, B'chlal, okay, we're not going into that now, we're not getting into the Sugi Pas Akum, Bishal Akum, Pas Akum, but that's where the child really, Yashiv held that Cheerios has a Taya Lechem, and Yashiv Arab Shlomo Zalman held that it has a Taya Lechem. So if Chaim Pechsheimer and Shlomo Miller and Belsky, they felt that it doesn't have a Taya Lechem. So the question is, if it has a shame Taya Lechem, now what bracha do you make of it? It's what is Cheerios? Bilase Ava, Bilase Raka. Well, let's say it's even Bilase Raka. I don't know what it is. I would think that it's Bilase Ava, but I don't know. But it's definitely baked. So Cheerios that are baked, so the chayra, it should be hamaitzi. That's their most case. Even if it's the Bilase Raka, which again I'm not sure, but it's the end of it is baked, and if it has a Taya Lechem, you make hamaitzi on one Cheerio.
Cheerios Taya Lechem.
That
if you asked Rabbi Yashiv on the street, he would say Cheerios Taya Lechem. A wrap is not.
Cheerios to me has more of a Taya Lechem than a wrap. Cheerios, I mean, it's just more crusty. It's like a toasted bread, something like that. But it has a, why not? Again, I'm not sure if Cheerios is a B'lilase Raka, B'lilase Ava. Is there any way to see that? Or
we can probably get a video how they make Cheerios. But the Rav is postulating that even 1 or 2 Cheerios should be Taya Lechem.
No. One second. Again, yeah, it's very small. And then I didn't pass it yet. I'm just telling you that I'm just trying to work on it to understand why shouldn't it be this remote. So, General Mills. I'm sorry, what?
I said postulating, being Metzia, not Paskining.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So, the General Mills, which is they're the ones that make Cheerios. They say that the katchila they cook it, and then they just toast it in order to dry it from the water that's in it. And then, so that's just the way they write it is like this. They toast it. This is what they write on, I think on the website or something. They toast it to ensure that the cereal of optimal crispiness and flavor will reach the consumer. That's how they write with the toasting. So the shaila is if that's considered afiyah. or that stays with bishul. Rabbi Yasha felt that that's still considered afiyah, even though that's the whole matorah of the toasting, and therefore has been passed to it. And that's a big problem. The Maisa is to make the mizayis, and the question is just going to be if you eat, if you're being kaveh suda on it, if you're eating enough of a shiv, kaveh suda, how do you find a pesha? Wants to know how do you define tzuras alechem? Well, that's what we saw last week. We discussed it in the Mishnah Berurah, Shem lechem and Taya lechem 2 weeks ago. That's from the hardest decisions, and that's why there could be a machlekes between Rabbi Yashiv and Rabbi Feinstein and whoever on what a wrap is and and all that, because there's no clarity, to define exactly what Taya lechem is. That's why you can have machlekes. If Cheerios, you have machlekes Gedolei HaPaiskim. Some Zalman Rabbi Yashiv holder has a Taya lechem, and Chaim Pinchas and the Belsky holder doesn't have a Taya lechem. That's why there's such a machlekes. The minig item is the ma'asav added to make a mezainis on Cheerios. Now the shayla is just again, if you eat a lot of it, not a lot of it. Again, the minig item is not to make a mitzvah. No, I'm not going into that. I'm not going that direction. I'm just discussing this shmuz. Why Rabbi Badna says you can't have 2 bowls of Cheerios because then you'll have to wash. Because he holds that it has a tayal lechem, and if you eat kaveh sud on it, you have to wash. Now, let's get back to let's discuss lasagna. Lasagna is as follows. Lasagna it's made out of, let's say, lakshan dough that you cook and then you bake it. That means lakshan.
What happened to waffles? What happened to waffles? The Rav discussed waffles.
So waffles, if anything, if someone's going to disagree with us and say that a pancake doesn't have a form to it, so it has been like Teresa, which we said clarinette, and we saw in the video very clearly the difference between a runny batter that has no mispash, it's mispashed completely, like the cheese blintzes, or a thick batter like the pancakes. But if someone's going to argue that a waffle in its surah, and therefore it's klar that it's hamaitzi, if it's not Rev Payas, and even it's Rev Payas, if you eat 2-3 waffles for lunch, then it's klar that you should go ahead and make hamaitzi and wash. That's why waffles is not so much of a discussion, because we hold that pancakes already have to do that. It's a koshke waffles. But if anything, waffles, even if the chalkim, if someone wants to argue on us with waffles, with pancakes, he should not be arguing. Someone wants to argue on us with pancakes, with waffles, kula hamamayda over there, that if you kaveh suda, you should make a hamaitzi. And even if you're not kaveh suda, if it's not made out of raven payas, I think it's always made out of raven payas, pancakes and waffles. It's eggs. I don't think there's too much water to it, bichlal. It's eggs and oil and other mishagas and sugar. And I don't think that it's not, someone could say it's not raven payas.
Lasagna.
Yeah, lasagna, and really there's lakshan kugalosa, but there's no time now. So let's just discuss lasagna. So lasagna, what they do with lasagna is as follows. Lasagna is you cook it and then you bake it many times, because it comes in the store. It comes, it's flour and water. I think that's frozen or whatever. It's, I don't know how they get it to that the way it looks.
Well, we can put up some pictures, but maybe the Rav wants to start talking with Lakshan, because I don't want to take. Yeah. I don't want. We'll go from the soap.
There's a big schmooze about donuts. I guess that will be discussed next week, right? Okay, because that's very negative to what we spoke about today with Machlekas Ben Tam and Rash. Okay, we can't do everything at once. But I'll upon him. So
maybe we should start with Lakshan. Lakshan first before the lasagna. No, that's how.
Okay, whatever you feel. Okay, fine. So what is Lakshan? So the Ramah says very clear in Sif Yud Gimel, not Sif Yud Dalet. Go back to Ramah for a minute. The Ramah says, he says Lakshan. The Ramah talks about Lakshan. Ilesbe Taya Lechem Kigan Lakshan Shekayim V'Rimazlech L'Kula Alma Em Avachan Alei Hamaitzi V'Loi Gimel Brachos L'I Mikri Lechem. Why? Lakshan does not have a Taya Lechem, so everyone agrees you do not make Hamaitzi. And now that means even if you eat a lot of it, it's not passed above a kissin, it just doesn't have a Taya Lechem. Now, the shaila is if you're baking it, Lakshan, you cook. Here you're going ahead and we're baking it. So that means like this. Lakshan that you cook, even though it's blilase ava, which it is blilase ava, but since it doesn't have a tayal lechem, therefore you're not going to make hamaitzi. and you're gonna make a mezainis as much as you eat, even if you convey a suda like we pass them. But over here, when you have lokshin kugel, over there you're baking a betana. So does afia mishana? Does it change the din or not? So now, the shayla is as follows. We said that chalut in Sif Yudalid she'achar kach offer betana pas gomeru u'mevarach ala ha'moitzi, which means the in the parentheses it says pirish kamin pas cholten oiseh b'roischem. You cook it in hot water, then you bake it in a tanner. You make ha'moitzi. So our lokshin kugel that you write was like a tchila cooked. That's the only way you can make the lokshin soft. Then you bake it, you make ha'moitzi. So the chayra, lokshin kugel is this Rima, and then the mechaber and Sif Yudalid that you should go ahead and make ha'moitzi to it. Therefore, Rabbi Yashiv says that maybe it's a pasaba b'kistin because maybe it's Rev Meperis, but if you're going to eat, if you're going to be kaveya suda on lokshin kugel, you should make a ha'moitzi. That is what Rabbi Yashiv held. And he said a lot of people are nichshel in this when they go to Simchas and they eat Yishalayim kugel, and they eat too much of it, they're being kaveya suda on it. Rabbi Yashiv says that's a regular ha'moitzi.
How many plus
Now,
two pieces for your suda l'chayra?
yes, two such, you're going to Shalaim soon, they were making a Yishalmi kugel, they make it like standing or something, and they cut it, whatever, akapanim. So that's Rabbi Yashiv shita. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman argues and holds kugel as it didn't like tafshil, even like afia, because, and many others, and that's the minig olam, is not to be machmer on this Rabbi Yashiv, and the minig olam is to feel that that's considered cooked and not baked. But let's just move into lasagna quickly. By lasagna, there you have those over there. It's longer. It's not just lokshin. It's wider and even maybe a little bit thicker. So over there, the Seitz of HBrachos says he says that it doesn't have a tail lechem. Bebelsky told me that lasagna really should be ha'moitzi, and he was medame to pashtida, which we're not going into now. And he said, you're right, if you kaveh a suda, he said it has a tail lechem in it. And even if you're not kaveh a suda, he says, since it has a tail lechem, you should really be making ha'moitzi. So why don't you make ha'moitzi? He says, because since it's cooked with so much water and ketchup and sauces, that makes it ais ha'moitzi, but it's not so pashut b'chlal. And l'maisa gerat, the minig ha'olam is to make a mezainis, and then we're not makbid because we say it doesn't have a tail lechem. And okay, it's too quick to discuss right now. I have to run out. Akapanim, let's just make a sikum. Pancakes, we're saying that I'll be pashtis. Pancakes, you should go ahead, and if you kaveh a suda, pancakes or waffles, you should make a ha'moitzi if you kaveh a suda. If you eat one, you don't make a ha'moitzi because you're not being kaveh a suda, but nothing else, no other reason. In Mitchell next week we'll continue on this topic. Thank you for listening.
One question: the lasagna is not a mitzi because of what?
Because it has so much wetness in it, it has the ketchup and all the other sauces that it's like bishul.
So if
And
you eat
therefore-
lasagna without any sweet stuff in it, then it could be a shayla of lechem.
Then yes, Rebelsky told me then you make a mitzi.
Then you make a mitzi. Okay, shkoyach by the Rav, and special.